How you doing, bro?
Yo,
First interview officially.
yes.
We did one before on Instagram Live, and that was a
Yeah.
lot of fun. But this one finally recorded. I'm
Yeah.
excited to chat with you about your album.
Yeah. No, si Dios quiere, this is gonna be probably the only interview, at least that I publish, to be able to really dive into the album and how we made anything, just like more personal. When I do other interviews, a lot of times they're really focused on like the TikTok of me talking to Romeo that went viral, or you know, a lot less sometimes about Frias. So I want to be able to really get personal with people and have a good conversation. That's why it was important for me to talk with my friend.
Beautiful. I love that. So, I mean, first things we're filming not in a studio, right? We're
No.
in your crib right
Yes.
now. Really beautiful home. First time I've been here.
Yeah.
How does it feel to move to this new house? Real quick, what's the address?
Oh my gosh. Nah, it's New York forever though. New York forever though. But I feel really peaceful here. It is far from everything, but I like it that way. Like I said earlier when we were talking off camera, I've already programmed my mind a little bit to know like wherever I gotta go is an hour away.
Yeah.
But I feel really peaceful. I love it. I do miss being closer to things and just the proximity of like seeing my friends faster and things like that. Now I gotta plan a lot more, but now I'm enjoying it, man. The house is so beautiful and I'm super peaceful.
Planning never hurt anybody.
Nah,
So
yeah.
that's a good thing. So, bro, this album I had the privilege to hear it in person, to go through it in order this time. Because
Yeah.
the first time I heard it, it was not in order.
In the alphabetical order from Dropbox. Dropbox, you guys gotta fix that. You
Yeah,
gotta let us get controls of how people can hear files in order. but-
Honestly, at Dropbox in this interview and say, hey, help us to better arrange music. But I got to hear it in order, and it is a beautiful and very personal album.
Yeah.
I feel like to better understand the album is to better understand Frias. So what I wanted to do is, before we even talk about the music, is to talk about you.
Yeah.
And to understand a little bit about who you are. So real quick, bro, tell us, where'd you grow up?
Yeah. So a super big part of my identity is that my family's from Dominican Republic. Something a lot of people don't know is that my mother's half Puerto Rican. Her pops is from Puerto Rico. So that played a big role in them landing in Bushwick as well. But my grandmother's family, that's fully Dominican, they also landed in Bushwick. And they all came from Dominican Republic during the diaspora in the 60s and the 70s. And my family is just very planted in that community. So I was born in Bushwick, grew up in Queens, and but my life was in Bushwick. My mom had a salon that she inherited from her mother. My dad worked at a meat market in Bushwick. The church I went to growing up was in Bushwick. So I was, just to make it simple, I say I'm from Bushwick. And it played a huge role in how I grew up, because I would especially say like the salon that my mother had, I was in that salon every day with her after school. And, I just remember being exposed there to music like Juan Luis Guerra, Anthony Santos, Aventura at the time, because when I was little was that they were in their peak. And I started knowing about more music there and falling in love with music there in that salon, playing as a little kid while my mom worked.
Yeah.
So that's pretty pivotal. And then in high school, I grew this love for Dominican Republic. There's different moments that I could pinpoint that add up to it, but there wasn't a specific thing that said was like, I love being Dominican and being from New York. I think it was a cumulative over the years of high school. I dated a girl that lived in Uptown, and so I got exposed to the Dominican culture in New York. And then the first recording studio I recorded one of my songs at was at a studio in Dykeman. And so I started at a young age going to the studios in Dykeman and being exposed to the New York Dominican culture, even more so than in Brooklyn, because in Brooklyn, I would say it was a lot of Puerto Ricans, a lot of black people, and a lot of Dominicans. But in Uptown, it was just Dominican people, at least that I was having experiences around. And so that played a huge role in just kind of forming my character, who I am, the things that I liked. High school is such a delicate age. So, yeah. And then church, of course, growing up, I went to this, you were there as well. Well, at the time when I started going, you were in college, but Misfit was one of the biggest youth churches, definitely in New York, as well on the East Coast. And I grew up going to church there every Friday. And I think actually that helped develop a lot of my artistic side. So, yeah, I would say like that is a little bit of context as to like what are the things that formed me more or less,
Well, so let's dive into that a little bit more. Tell me how your family formed your musical passion.
Yeah. So in my family, funny enough, like nobody is musically inclined.
At all.
At all.
Nobody.
Not
Wow.
Now, I heard a story, funny enough. It might be from my mom's dad's side, the Puerto Rican side, but from my grandfather's cousins used to play with Hector Lavoe. That's something that I found out recently, like in the last few years. I didn't know that growing up, but
I feel like in all of our families, there are those stories that are mad important, but
Yeah.
you don't hear about them till
Till
you're
you're
like
22,
in your 20s.
yeah.
Like, where have these stories been? 100%.
and why have I not seen those? Like, why have I not seen those people?
Right,
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
right.
Like,
Where
are
are
they? Are
they?
they lost
Yeah,
in Puerto
right,
Rico?
exactly. Yeah.
But no, I did grow up with my Dominican side more. My grandfather's Puerto Rican family, they cut him off because he married my grandma and she was Dominican. And it was just because of that, just because she was Dominican. So I didn't really get to grow up experiencing that side of my culture. That's why I always say I'm Dominican. But the only people I know of in my family that had a little bit of musical inclination was supposedly my grandfather's uncles that they played with Hector Lavoe. But other than that, I would say, how did my family kind of like shape my interest in music?
Yeah, well, so like, where do you remember hearing music the most? Surrounding your family.
Right. So I would say predominantly like, I don't know what happened now, but there's not as many like baby showers
Nah, bro.
and big birthday parties like as there was in the 2000s. Like
Yeah.
I remember being little and growing up in those parties and like every weekend there was something for someone.
Yeah.
And I would say in those like family environments was that I really grew, or I wouldn't say grew, I was exposed more to music. In my house, my mother only allowed Christian music. So it was in those settings more that I heard more merengue, more bachata, more stuff like that. My mom would play though Juan Luis Guerra in the crib. That's like an easy middle ground, right? But yeah, I would say probably the biggest thing that shaped a lot of my musical experience and even why I do bachata was the trips that I would take to Dominican Republic in the summer. So since I was born, I mean, I think the first one might have happened literally when I was like 1. I would spend June to August in Dominican Republic. And I would be in my grandparents' house. And I would spend a month and a half in Moca and a month in the capital. And so that formed a lot of like me being bilingual, me feeling like one half of my heart is in New York, one half is in DR. I remember I would wait the whole school year to like go be in DR for the summer. And yeah, because of the beaches and the food and, my grandparents have a huge mansion in DR. And so just even the space. So I definitely would say those trips influenced a lot of like my love for music and hearing music over there. It feels different when you listen to music in DR on
How
the
does
road.
it feel? What's the
I would
difference?
say, especially with tropical music, there's something special about listening to music where it was born. So for example, like I'm from Brooklyn. When I listen to Jay-Z while I'm driving down Myrtle or Flushing, it feels in sync.
Yeah.
So that's probably the best way I could put it. Like when I hear Anthony Santos in New York, it doesn't hit the same way as when I hear Anthony Santos and I'm in Moca, in the Campo. It feels like it. When I hear Aventura and I'm in the Bronx or I'm in Dykeman, you feel in sync.
Yeah.
And that's a part, before we, dive more into the album, but we're talking about like influences. That is a big part of how I want people to feel when they hear Si Dios Quiere. That any Latino, not just Dominicans. I'm Dominican, so I talk a lot about my experience, but that people who grew up as Latinos in New York, that they could hear that album and feel like, oh, wow, this feels in sync. I feel in tune right now hearing this.
That's a beautiful concept, right? Of like how music connects to not just a culture and to a people, but to literally places.
Yeah.
Right, to a physical environment, and how through listening to the album you could be taken back to Bushwick.
No, I
That's
remember I went to high school in Long Island City, right next to Queensbridge Projects, like right there on the water in LIC.
Yeah.
And I would take the Q53 to the F train.
Yeah.
And I remember when I would walk out, my favorite hip hop album of all time is Illmatic by Nas.
Fire.
And so I remember hearing Illmatic in high school, getting off the train in Queensbridge. Like,
that's
it's
crazy.
in sync. You feel in tune. It's like hearing ASAP Mob in Harlem, or like just these weird things. I don't know why music is like I'm sure country music sounds better in Tennessee. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or whichever southern state.
Right.
Yeah,
in Arkansas, Tulsa.
Right. But that's really incredible.
Yeah.
What was the first song you ever wrote? You remember it?
Yeah, when I started writing music at like 10 years old.
Wow. Dang.
Yeah. So I've been writing music for 13 years. And it was a rap. I don't remember. I didn't give it a title, but it was just a rap. I don't remember the rap that well, but
that's what I was gonna ask you if you could.
It was like, well, I think, bro, I was 10 years old, so please don't kill me in the comments. But it was like, I remember the first two lines. It was like, EGF, we be the best. Forget the like. I was 10, so
Fire,
it doesn't.
Bro.
But I mean, for a 10-year-old to compose something like that,
At
but
all.
yeah.
But
to even understand rhyme structure at that age, but I started writing music at 10.
Yeah. So I mean, you started writing at 10, and you started off with hip hop.
Yes.
Why was that?
I have an early music memory that I don't think I've ever shared this before. So this is like brand new. One of the first memories I have of falling in love with music was I heard Bedtime Story by Slick Rick with my uncle. So my uncle lived in New Jersey at the time with all my cousins that were my age. And so my mom would let me go to their house on the weekends sometimes. And my uncle is a hip hop crackhead. Like, he loves everything hip hop.
Yeah.
Especially like 90s hip hop. So I remember being in the back of his car, passing the Holland Tunnel, and he was playing Slick Rick. And it was the first time I heard a song that he was rapping and I could see what he's saying. And so I remember hearing Bedtime Story by Slick Rick, and I was just like a little kid in awe. And I must have been around 10 or 11 years old.
Yeah.
So I think that's what impulsed me to rap. Wow. I've never shared that story, but I'm remembering it. And that's like a core memory that I have. I literally remember like tapping my foot and being like, seeing the words he was saying.
Wow.
And that shaped a lot of how I fell in love with rap. And thanks to my uncle Steven and my aunt Gladys, I grew that love for hip hop so much. And in those car rides to my cousin's house in New Jersey, that's when I would hear Illmatic. So, bro, I was like 12 years old listening to Illmatic. Yeah, and Reasonable Doubt and 36 Chambers and all Brand Nubian and all those groups at 12 years old, loving it like I loved it. There was no better music in the world to me. The only music I always loved besides that was Aventura.
Wow.
Yeah.
So even that early, we're seeing like your influences coming in and being super powerful in your life, in your story, and literally where you walked around. I mean, listening to Nas while being in Queensbridge, that's fire. So I mean, you started out writing hip hop. What does hip hop mean to you now?
Oh, well, I don't, and I'm glad I get to talk about it a little because I don't really get too many spaces to talk about it. But hip hop, if you grow up in New York, that's such a like predominant part of our culture because hip hop was born in New York. And so you feel that music, I think, like what I was talking about earlier, that feeling of being in tune more than in any other place. Like, it doesn't hit the same when I'm in other places. And so, hip hop shaped me. Like, my favorite artist is, Kanye West and Romeo Santos and Juan Luis Guerra. Those are like my
top three.
Yeah, and Jay-Z's in there as well, and then a band called The Neighborhood. That's like my top 5 artists ever. Yeah. But the point is that Kanye, like one of my favorite hip hop songs since I was little, was Stronger. by Kanye. And I always remember like seeing that music video and how futuristic it was. And those are like little moments, that the bedtime story moment, hearing Illmatic, like those are little things that added up to making me just want to do music.
Right.
So, you know, my first experience of falling in love with music was hip hop. And I think my advantage in that, like one of the reasons I value and honor the culture of hip hop so much is because I've taken what I've learned and experienced by loving that music, and I've tried to involve it as much as I can into bachata. And so, you know, like whether it's Yeezus or Graduation or Dark Fantasy, or whether it's Blueprint 3 or The Blueprint, or like I'm looking at these things that they did and I'm like, how can I do that in bachata?
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so I think it translates. Of course, bachata is a double-edged sword because we know that the moments that have been innovative have been breakthrough moments globally. But bachata also is very it can be closed-minded, and it can, just like most humans, it can be fearful of change, and they're very attached to how the music was in the 90s and the 80s. And so there's always so much pushback whenever I'm trying to innovate and bring in different influences, whether it's musically in synths or in the way that I write. But you know, like the people who win are not the people that do the safe things. You know what I mean? Like, you know, Steve Jobs wasn't a safe person. Kanye is not a safe person. Walt Disney's not a safe. Like, it's all people who do things that look crazy. Now, I'm not saying I'm trying to be Steve Jobs or Walt Disney, but I'm just talking about when I look at like innovative people, there's always so much pushback in their stories. So if I want to innovate in bachata, I know it comes with pushback, but I also have like a philosophy on music that we should just make what we love. So I'm not really worried about creating things that make someone else feel safe. I'm not really worried about making music that people are used to. I need to know that when I'm old and I look back at what I did with my talent, that I'm like, I'm proud of what I made. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's all the value there is in that.
That's awesome. That's really dope, bro.
Yeah, and to connect it, like hip hop played a role in that. So that's what hip hop, like how much it means to me.
Yeah. So I mean, you moved from hip hop to bachata.
Yeah.
What was that transition like?
So I've told the story a lot of times. I guess I could talk more what the transition was like rather than how it happened.
Yeah.
But you know, definitely it was difficult because, like, for the people that don't know, I made Christian hip hop and a lot of doors opened for me really fast at a very young age. I got to write, I don't know if you know this, but I got to write for Toby Mac when I was like 16 years old.
No, I didn't know that.
I got to the opportunity because of Social Club.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So the church that I grew up in, it was like super influential in hip hop music culture within Christianity. And I was making Christian hip hop, and I was rapping at Misfit, and these guys named Social Club, they came, and they loved me and a friend of mine named Amari. His name is Tommy Revenge now. And they kind of took us under their wings. And through that, I met Wordsplayed, I met Andy Mineo. Amari got the opportunity to write for Lecrae and other big artists. I got the opportunity to write for Toby Mac. And I remember we got to open up, like I got to open up on tour for Social Club because of Ray and Marty. And I had so many doors opening there that when I started doing bachata, everybody was just kind of like, what are you doing? And why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I've even met up with people that I used to make Christian hip hop music with, and they'll be like, yo, if you would have stood in that, like, do you know where you could have been by now? You know? And I don't, you know, when I fell in love with that music to me, I'm a purist. So I didn't care so much about what opportunities I already had or what doors were opening. I have to make things that I'm proud of and that I'm excited about. Hip hop was also changing in a direction that I don't think I would have suited well.
Interesting.
Because the way hip hop music is now is very like disposable. So yeah, like Now, there's people that make incredible music still
Sure.
in hip hop. And I don't think that just because you're the top lyricist in the world, that makes you an incredible hip hop artist either. Like, Kanye's not the top lyrical artist in the world. And to me, he's the best hip hop artist of all time.
Wow.
But he's not the best rapper of all time.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I don't think it's just because of lyrical stuff or lyrical content. There's people that make it. Tyler, the Creator, is not the number one rapper. He makes incredible hip hop music. So, the point is that I made music that was more in Christian hip hop. I made music that was more Kendrick like, more J. Cole like, and it wasn't going in that direction. Trap was booming. We had the explosion of Future, Young Thug, the whole Atlanta movement, and it was shifting music entirely. It was at that time they were like, say, mumble rap. Like it was changing completely. This is like 2016, 2017. And at that time in hip hop as well, everybody was copying Drake. So that was another thing that was like, I don't know where this is going, and I don't feel like I'm gonna add value to this.
Interesting.
So my whole thing was like, okay, what's something, and it wasn't even that much so. Really, that was more like the cherry on top because I was falling in love with bachata.
I see.
So I fell in love with bachata, and I was like, hip hop is not going in a direction that I'm gonna be
that
able
you
to
wanna
add
go.
value to, or honestly, just I might not even be able to evolve with this.
I see.
You know, or do the evolving because of the way that I loved hip hop. You know what I mean? So we see, like, of course, the big three in hip hop is still J. Cole, Kendrick, and Drake, but you know, they're 15 years in. It's about to be in 5 more years. There'll be like we might get the last J. Cole album, the last Kendrick album. Drake probably has 4 or 5 more years in him, and that's it. They're gonna enter that Jay-Z-esque era. There's only been one rapper who's held on to eternal youth, and it's Kanye. And because Kanye has a superpower that no one else has, I don't know. I literally think it's just that God gave it to him. I hope I can have some of that. But Kanye's thing is that it doesn't matter how old he is because he really does think individually. And it's ego as well and selfishness, but because he's so self-involved, he doesn't care about other things people do. That has helped him to always make his own thing. So, you know, when it comes to like, I didn't feel like I was going to be able to survive that. You know, I know I went off on a little tangent, but it's to express like where that stuff was going, I didn't fit there.
Yeah.
I thought I can offer something unique in bachata.
So let's jump in there. Let's talk about bachata a little bit. This new album.
Yeah.
Well, first off, before we get to the new album, how many albums have you done so far?
This is my second album.
Yeah.
This is album number 2. The last one came out 3 years ago.
How are you feeling?
I feel very I feel a lot of things. I'm joyful.
Yeah.
It's bittersweet because you work on, like, I've been working on that album for almost 3 years.
Yeah.
So
It's a pandemic album, yeah?
yeah. Well, I did Eden in the pandemic.
Got it. Okay.
This album, I started it at the end of 2020, right after Eden came out. So Eden came out November 2020, and in December, I started making new music. So it's weird because you love this thing so much, and it's so personal to you for years. Like, it's like raising a kid, basically, you know? Because these are things that come from your mind and that you develop. Like, you walk into a studio, nothing's there. And then, you know, you leave and something exists.
Yeah.
So it's hard to kind of close the door on it and be like, it's done. Like, that's it. You know, you thought of all the skits you could do. You thought of all the intro, the outro, the little details. You said everything you have to offer right now. And not to keep going off, but it feels bittersweet.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for the world to have it. Because that's the thing. When you're making it, it's yours. And then as soon as it's out, bro, that's it. It's other people's.
It's like you're sending your kid to school.
Yeah,
You
no.
gotta go.
That's it.
Be a human.
And it is like you're saying, because someone could be like, why is that kid acting like that? Why is he jumping on the... Like, now you put it into the world for them to critique it.
Yeah.
Some people, they're going to make kids to it. They're going to dance to it at their weddings. They're going to, make memories to it and drive to it. And some people are going to hate it.
Yeah.
And that's how music is. So... I feel a little bit detached from it now, honestly, because I kind of had to accept like this is gonna be the moment I sent the masters in for distribution, I was like, okay, like
It's gone.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How do you think you've grown as an artist from your first album to this album?
vocally.
Mm.
That's like I think when people hear this album, that'll be the number one thing they hear is like, wow, like if I listen to Eden and then I listen to Si Dios Quiere,
Yeah.
the growth vocally. And I value that so much. That's probably the thing I'm the most proud of.
Yeah.
And then as well as like sonically, like these bachata songs do not sound like the bachata songs on Eden. Like this is bachata on crack or steroids. Like this is everything. The little details that a listener might not even catch, like little cuts with the bongos and the guiras. This is everything. This is Eden on steroids. Like, yeah. And way more bachata. Like, this is about all my albums. I'm a bachatero. My first album was half reggaeton, half bachata. So I think that's another difference that people are gonna notice is like, okay, like this really is a bachata project. There's moments that are not bachata, but yeah, this is like it's gonna be a moment where people see like, okay, this is developing, and I like it or I don't.
Yeah. No, I'm excited also for everyone to hear it. It's a really, really good album. Tell us about the title.
Yeah,
Si
yeah.
Dios quiere.
So, si Dios quiere significa it means God willing. So, in Latin culture in New York, I can specifically speak to Puerto Ricans and Dominicans. We say si Dios quiere for everything. So, you'll say, Ma, I'll see you tomorrow. And she'll be like, nos vemos mañana si Dios quiere. Or you can be like, I'm going to put this project out in November. And they'll be like, si Dios quiere. You know what I mean? Like everything is God willing.
Right.
So when I was making this project, one of the main things that I was trying to communicate in the visuals, in the sonics, in the lyrics, in the feeling of the album and the branding was what it felt like growing up as a Dominican in New York.
Interesting.
And so I wanted the album to feel like that. So I knew that before I had the name. So I knew what I wanted the album to feel like. Again, like if people get to know me, I'm very big on like feelings, taste, like textures, right? So I was explaining to you how the music made me feel at 10, 11, 12 years old. So like that's an important part of who I am. So I knew what I wanted it to feel like before I even came up with the name, the album cover, any of that. And so I said, okay, what does growing up in New York as a Dominican feel like? And to me, the word that was blaring was si Dios quiere. And I think I look for things that, for me in music, I try to look for things that we say commonly. So I do value when people are super individualistic and come up with something brand new, but I also value familiarity.
Yeah. The
And
shared
so-
language
Yeah.
between people. Yeah.
That it's like people connect to that, right? And so I wanted to create an album that felt like the Dominican New York experience growing up, what it felt like taking the A train, hearing merengue in the bodega, turning on La Mega and hearing reggaeton playing or Aventura or Anthony Santo. What it felt like being in the barbershop at the salon. Like, what does that feel like? If it was a taste, if it was a texture, if it was a color palette, like, what are those things? And I came up with Si Dios Quiere that way, and I had asked a few people, and everybody was like, yo, that's fire. That's a
That's a fire
tattoo.
title. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
100%.
Like, that's a
Yeah,
tattoo.
yeah,
Like,
I'll
it's
do.
tattooable. So
Yeah.
that was, to me, like, kind of the seal on it, you know?
Yeah. So thinking through the whole track list, right? I don't want to dive into every song because obviously we want the listeners to go and check it out for themselves. You were talking about your album kind of like a kid.
Yes.
Right? Comes out of your mind, right? From you. Very intimate piece of work. So I'm not gonna ask you to pick a favorite. That's like telling you to pick a favorite
kid.
That's really difficult. But which song is special to you in that you felt encouraged as an artist, that you were like, yeah, I could do this because of this song?
That's a fire question.
Thank you.
Because that's like asking, which song do you feel like represents the most growth?
Yeah.
I would say there's a super special record on there to me that that I think kind of like stamps a before and after a little bit of when I felt like I could really sing. But it's not even so much about singing. It was everything. The content of the music, the musicality, the melodies, the vocal performance, the mix. And it's the outro of the album. It's called Gethsemane. And so it's written in Spanish, Gethsemane. And Gethsemane was, I believe it was like the last garden that Jesus was recorded praying in. And in that moment, I've seen a lot of sermons that they relate that to like the highest moment of stress in Jesus's lifetime. And so I was like, okay, not that I was trying to write a song about him in that moment. I was going through a lot of stuff personally, spiritually, that I was like, how can I reflect that in music? And so I wrote this song called Gethsemane. When I originally wrote it, it was called La Oración. And when I finished writing it, that I looked at the content of like the high stress, one of the lyrics in the hook, it says, Estrellas no brillan, se queman noche y día. That means stars don't shine, they burn. And so it's this idea of like the battle I have with the idea of fame, of pursuing music, of the rat race, just the I didn't think I could make a song like that in bachata.
Yeah.
Conceptually, I could write 1,000 songs about love and heartbreak.
Yeah.
But to me, it was valuable that I was able to make something deeper than that. And that I remember I played it for someone that I work on music with, and their eyes got watery when they heard it. Yeah. And that's when I knew, like, okay, that's special. Like, so when I was finishing it, the song at the time was called La Oración. And I was like, what can make this even more special, right? And so my grandmother, I had recorded her praying for me on my 22nd birthday.
Yeah.
And I took that, the voice of her praying for me on my birthday, and we added it into the outro and into the beginning of the song and the end of the song. And that took it to, if the song is like a spiritual experience. So when you hear the album, that also ties it in a lot just because of how the album starts.
Yeah.
And some of the other like little details in the moment that my grandma's there praying. She's praying in that song. And me, I didn't want to pray in the song because the song is a prayer.
Yeah.
So
because you are praying,
I'm praying in the song.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So, and then that's kind of how I landed at the title, Gethsemane, was because I was like, okay, familiarity.
Yeah.
And the idea of that Jesus was praying in this moment of high stress. And so I kind of just related it to myself. It's not, there's nothing deeper than that. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. No, hearing your grandmother's voice in the song I know for me, was a really touching moment.
Yeah.
Primarily because Abuela's prayers are different.
Yeah,
like,
his different.
Abuela's prayers are way different than my prayers or anyone else's prayers. So I know for people listening to the song, it's going to be really, really encouraging. And it was cool to see such an intimate part of you and your family, the influences that are acting on you in the song. That was absolutely gorgeous. What I want to do, so I know for me, I love music. I also like entertainment, performance, whatever. I love getting to see behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Not just in the product, not just seeing the magic trick, but like how you made the magic happen.
Yeah.
So I wanted to pick one song that I thought was, I mean, all of them are good. This one particularly I thought was like technically good, but it also didn't give away any secrets because I know that you've got some like hidden gems.
Yes, there are some surprises on the album.
Right, so I was trying not to pick one of those, but I wanted to unpack La Niña.
Oof, yeah.
First, tell us, how did it start? Like, how did you come up with the melody? Did it start with the lyric? Like, what was the origin of this song?
So, I believe that La Niña started in the beginning of 2022. And 2021, I had done a big event, went on a media tour in DR. That was huge. My music started playing in Italy a lot, in Spain a lot, in DR on the radio a lot, and TV. And I kind of fell in love with like bachata that was a little bit more traditional. So that trip really shifted. That trip I took to DR in 2021 shifted a lot of how I did bachata, because I fell in love with a bit of the more grassroots style of the music. Um, and so I remember, I'm trying to remember, I started that idea on this whole album. Every song besides the interlude and the intro are co-produced by my boy Joelito, phenomenal producer, musician, artist, writer, just one of the most talented people that I know. And he was in charge of like all the files for this album up until mixing. Then I took it from there. And I remember we would do these sessions, like these melody sessions. So he would get on his guitar, I would have a microphone, we would put a voice memo on our iPhones and just start doing ideas. And so I think what happened was he played the melody on the guitar that you hear in the beginning of the song. And that just like struck something in me of like, oh, we're gonna do a traditional
That's
one.
the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, if you hear that record, and throughout the album, I sample my voice a lot. That's something that I try to do to like make my music stick out.
Interesting.
That I would say like that makes it unique.
For those of us who don't know,
Yes.
sampling your own voice. What does that?
Okay,
entail?
so
What does that
like in the simplest way I could put it is like we'll take a microphone. Sampling is playing a piece of music or like using something from somewhere else and involving it in a new production or in a new beat, right? And so what we'll do is we'll take a microphone and I'll start singing melodies with my voice. So it could be like, this is gonna sound weird unedited, but like in La Niña, the literal sound that's there is me going with my mouth. And so we record that.
Yeah.
We put a bunch of filters on it. We pitch it up. We distort it.
Yeah.
We put guitar pedals on it. And it becomes this sample. It becomes
Wow.
this sound that you hear in the song. You're like, what is that sound? Like, what is
Right.
that? And
So
so
that's just your
that's just my
voice.
voice.
That's wild.
Yes, and
Yeah.
we do that a lot throughout the album.
Yeah.
It happens in the beginning of Hasta el Fin, in Getsemani,
Wow.
in Precaución.
Sorry, real quick. You know why that's so mind-boggling to me?
Yeah.
Because often, especially with bachata music,
Yeah.
right, it can feel so distant, right? Like there's no way I could ever come close to writing a song, especially a bachata song.
Yeah.
So to hear that, like, you used your voice,
Like
just
an instrument, yeah.
right? It brings it. Not to say that anyone can do it. That's definitely not true.
Yeah.
But just saying that if there are those who are listening who are into music,
Yeah.
that they have the ability just with their voice to make beautiful music.
Yeah.
Just from that. It's nuts.
Yeah,
It's-
no,
that's
your
really, really
voice
cool.
is an instrument. To the people that watch this and make music, or I got the chance to speak at my old high school a couple days ago.
Oh, nice.
And literally they had invited me for Latin Heritage Month to talk about bachata and the music that I make.
Yeah.
And I sat down, I did something similar to this, and afterwards a bunch of kids that did music, they're 15, 14, 16. They came up to me and they were asking me questions, and I kind of just had to like show them how close they are
Yeah.
to making things. And yeah, your voice is an instrument. You know, I learned that from John Bellion. John Bellion is a huge musical influence that I have that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah.
Like he probably doesn't know, like he impacts bachata. But
Right.
the point is that with the album, and back to La Niña,
Yeah.
I remember he did the melody on the intro of the guitar, and then the first thing that just like I kind of just mumbled it, La Niña, da, and then just na 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 na, and that kind of just that La Niña,
Yeah.
it kind of set the tone for how it was gonna come out. I don't remember what were the next steps after that. It's a little bit blurred in my mind, but I do remember writing it in my room, and I remember coming up with the story. And I have this note section in my iPhone of like different concepts. And so one of the concepts I had, which is something that I feel a lot of people go through, is and that even I've been through, is that people fall in love and they grow out of love with each other. That happens mostly when people are young. I'm sure it happens to people who are old as well, but from the people I know in real life, a lot of people experience that when they're younger. They have a high school sweetheart and they grow out of that love. And then usually the second person they love is like the love of their life.
Right.
You know? And so there was this concept that I had of like write a song about falling out of love. Not because anyone cheated, not because anyone got hit, just because there was a disconnect and you grew apart. And so many people go through that. And so I remember being in my room and being like, okay, how do I put that into words? And so there are so many lyrics. That's one of the songs that I'm most proud of lyrically as well. And there's so many lyrics in that song that talk about like how people grow apart from each other. Like there's a lyric that says, Nuestro amor fue un contrato hecho para expirar, which means we signed a contract we knew was going to expire soon. And so there's all these like little nuances like that that point back to this thing of like, sometimes you get into it and you hope it lasts forever, but you got this feeling that it won't or it might not. And love is beautiful in the way that you have to risk that anyways and go into it. Yeah. So that's a little bit of like how I jumped into it. And then I do remember finishing it. It was an incredible night. We got to work at the studio with a guy named Jose Tranquilo in Dykeman at this studio called Rapid Studios. Everybody who's big in bachata works there. Raulín Rodriguez, Elvis Martinez, Zacaria Ferreira, Lenny Santos, the producer of Aventura. He does all his music there. And so I rented out that studio to work with Jose Tranquilo on that song. We went up there. We got my guy Kels to record Requinto, the lead guitar. Joelito was there. He played bass. He actually played the segunda on that song. And my other boy, Joel Bongo, he did the percussion for the record. So, and I tried to minimize the song in that there is sounds in there, but it's more traditional. Wow. And so, yeah. I got to work with a dream team on that record.
That's awesome. Real quick, when you were talking about writing the lyrics, one thing that you said that was really interesting to me is you didn't say, I went into my room and I wrote the song. You said, I went into my room and I wrote the story.
Yeah.
Tell me how you think about music writing lyrics as storytelling.
Okay, so for me, my favorite part of anything that has to do with artistry is the songwriting part. So I find the most joy, like I consider myself a songwriter before an artist, before a producer, before anything. And I love storytelling. To me, that's the most valuable thing in the world is like, who can tell the best story? Yeah. Steve Jobs said that. He said the storytellers have all the power. And so like it's the way you present things to people. We know that about persuasion, about preaching, about communicating, on anything, a podcast, an Instagram reel. Yeah. Like the people who know how to tell stories the best way get the furthest and do the most. And so I didn't fall in love with stories because of that. Yeah. I fell in love with stories because I love good stories, and that strikes true to me. And so, honestly speaking, also just the people that I love in music, they write great stories. John Bellion, great storyteller. Yeah. He can make Pixar movies if he wanted to. Yeah. Romeo is going to go down as one of the greatest songwriters in all of music, not just Spanish music, music. Phenomenal storyteller. Juan Luis Guerra, phenomenal storyteller. Kanye, when he wants to be, phenomenal storytellers. Yeah. You know, I remember when I was younger, I've never told the story, but when I was like 12 years old, my parents were going to get divorced. And I remember one day my mom said, pack your bags, pack your maleta, get whatever you want. We're moving to DR. One day, we're moving to DR. I was like 12 years old. This is right before I started going to Misfit. Wow. I remember like that feeling of like my family's gonna break up, like my family's gonna be torn apart at 12. The world was ending for me. And I remember on the plane ride hearing a song by Kanye called Hey Mama. And the story, he wrote that song for me. That's how I felt. Wow. And so I want to give people that feeling. So that's why storytelling is so important to me, because of like the way Hey Mama comforted me when I was 12, you know?
That's wild that like these really specific stories have such general impact and power. Yeah. Right. Like you're writing from your perspective, yet it can hit thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, man, that's really beautiful. Hey, so I want to transition us really quickly because again, I do want people to listen to the album and not give away too much of the magic. But in both of your albums now, Eden, Si Dios Quiere, very religious themes.
Yes.
Very religious themes. Tell us a little bit about your faith.
Yeah. So I grew up, my grandparents are church planners. My mom was a youth pastor. Those are things that you know. For the people watching this podcast, David is one of my really close friends. He's also
we're actually friends. In real life.
He's also a brilliant communicator and is one of the most the people that speaks the most eloquently that I know and can control the conversation well. But the point is that so he knows the things I'm saying, but I'll tell it to you guys. My mom was a youth pastor. I grew up in church my whole life, and that was a huge part of who I am. And I don't think I know a lot of people that grow up in church, and it's this thing that feels very distant to them. It feels very obligatory. Sienten como que like their parents are forcing them to go. And I never felt that way, honestly. As a kid,
Wow.
I enjoyed church. I saw them like my family.
Wow.
But it wasn't personal to me, as like I didn't really like God was just this thing that was normalized in the best way that I could put it. And so it wasn't until I was like 12, which that's a whole other story, but that I would say I had a real experience with God at 12 years old.
Wow.
On a mountain in Dominican Republic. Something's always happening in DR.
That's fire, bro. On a mountain?
On a mountain in Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
You know, I was praying and I really experienced the presence of God. It's something I've felt that way at least few times in my life. And nothing tragic was happening in my life. My parents were together again. Like there was no huge dramatic thing going on. So it's not like there was a trauma that made me feel, you know what I mean?
Right.
No, I experienced this for real.
Yeah.
And,
on a mountain.
And it was so significant, I remember it. Yeah, like on a mountain.
Yeah.
It wasn't the sunset, so it's not like I saw this really beautiful.
Right.
I really felt in that moment that I experienced the presence of God at such a young age, and that changed my life. I came back to New York. I started writing Christian raps, and I got super involved in church. I started going to Misfit. My sister had a friend of her that was a friend of hers named Joaquin, who was at church in that time, and she was like, "Hey, my little brother raps. He really wants to come to your church because you guys like do hip hop stuff." And yeah, and then after that, I would say that Misfit played such a huge role in just me believing in Jesus, being Christian, loving the local church, and loving people the way that Jesus wants people to be loved. And also in my creativity. Misfit was a space that really did empower people to be creative. If they used it for all the right reasons, it's a different thing. But they definitely, like, I felt safe being creative there. And that was so helpful because it eased my relationship with God so much. I didn't feel like I had to do something I loved outside of church.
Sure.
And so, and also like a lot of my identity, like I didn't relate to a lot of like the super churchy kids that were pastors' kids or super religious people either. Like a lot of my identity, like I said, I'm a real New Yorker. So a lot of who I am is like I love sneakers.
Sure.
I love the Yankees. I love hip hop. And I met like-minded people at church that were like that. And we had the most important thing in common, which was we love Jesus.
Yeah.
So that shaped a lot of my teenage life. And who I am today. And I met so many incredible people being in that environment. And to this day, I don't work at church, but I volunteer there, and it's a huge part of honestly keeping me grounded and stable and level-headed. And I don't do it for that reason. You know, I go there to be around like-minded people, but it definitely has those effects on my life.
How does your relationship with God impact the literal music that you're writing? So like when you're in the studio, when you're in your room writing a story, right?
Yeah.
Like how does God show up there?
So I'm gonna, now we're gonna get more personal because I'll put this out there. So obviously I make bachata. Bachata is not worship music, But something that I've always felt since I was young, even making Christian hip hop, was like, let artists make art and go to theologians for theology. And so I always had this concept of like, I can't break down sanctification to you in 3 minutes in a song. Like, please stop holding me to this standard that I'm going to say everything right in this time when no one says everything right all the time. And so when I started making music, I never looked at it as secular or Christian because I always looked at it like storytelling. So I don't even watch movies and go, I'm going to watch Christian movies. I just go, I want to see someone say a good story. You could say a good story, I'll watch it. So that's how I always looked at music. And so as I got older and my relationship with God developed more and more, I started realizing, I said, this has to be the center thing in my life, because if I'm not writing about it, and my writing takes up most of my life, then I have to figure out how is this going to be my foundation. And so, like, I don't talk too much about how I make things, but for example, before I write a song, I pray. Before I work on a music video concept, I pray. Before I have a business meeting, I pray. Before I design merch, I pray. Before I do everything that has to do with my career, I pray. So that's such a huge practice in my life that also gives me an indication of when I feel peaceful in things and what I shouldn't do. I don't always hit it on the head every time.
Sure.
There's moments, and also the humanity of it is always figuring out where's the boundary, what's the line. But for me, I've always looked at it as this thing. I know a lot of people are always on the fence about that. I've always purely looked at music as storytelling. We don't go to people, you shouldn't read fiction books, or you shouldn't read these type of books, or you shouldn't write these type of books. Like, no, like, let people write stories. When you're talking to people and having conversations, you're not like, you should only have Christian conversations. You know what I mean? You're conversing. You're hearing what that person cheated on you. Wow. That person stole from you. Wow. That person made you feel that way. Wow.
So,
you know,
real quick, what makes trying to like navigate with your faith in an industry that's definitely not like
God
Christian?
honoring, yeah.
Yeah, what makes that difficult?
I think the biggest the biggest challenges have been some of the things that are normalized just in secular culture in general that are a little bit contrary to just who I am.
Sure.
And so, like, for instance, in bachata is synonymous with drinking, especially like romo, whiskey, rum, like hard liquor. And I don't drink at all. And not that I don't drink because I'm Christian, I just don't like drinking. And so when I was younger, I made a promise to God that I wasn't going to drink, that wouldn't be a part of my life. And so I have had challenges and environments where people don't really see me like a bachatero just because I don't drink.
Wow.
And because of that simple thing. Like, I remember I was at a show one time and there was this great bachata artist performing, and he took a Brugal bottle and he was drinking, and he goes like, que no bebe no es bachatero.
Wow.
And so I'm just like, wow, like there's so much pushback just because of something so simple as that. And so I think navigating those things is like, I don't easily fall into peer pressure. Like, not to pat myself on the back, but I really, I can count on one hand the times in my life I've fallen into a bad peer pressure.
Yeah.
And so I've always found myself, being a bit more of like doing my own thing in those settings. And so I go to studios so much. The number one thing people do in studios is smoke weed. Now, I'll be honest with you. You smoke weed, I don't have a problem. You drink, I don't have a problem with that. I just don't do it. So one thing I don't do is I don't make people feel uncomfortable because of what they do. And then the other thing I don't do is I also don't allow people to force me to do something I'm not comfortable with. And so setting some of those boundaries has let me kind of like figure out the lines of like, this is how I protect myself. And try to have wisdom in those settings. So I would say those are like the really big challenges that I face because of how normalized it is, but not just in bachata, just
Life.
in life in general. Yeah.
I hear that. Yeah, man. So I mean, one thing I've appreciated about your approach is that you're not claiming to be the expert. You're
Yeah.
not claiming to like, I've got the formula figured out.
Right.
You're trying to live this thing as faithfully, as honestly as you can.
Yeah.
And man, and that's really awesome, and how you're able to incorporate your relationship with God into everything you do is really admirable.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's awesome. So hey, I wanna end with a few things. One is, someone listens to the whole album. Right?
Yeah.
What's like in a few sentences? What you want them to walk away with? What do you want them to know, to feel?
If you listen to Si Dios Quiere, one of the primary things that I desire for people to feel and leave with is an appreciation more, like having more appreciation for bachata. That they could hear this and be like, this music hasn't really been popular for a while. And when I say popular, yes, Romeo has always been there, Prince Royce has always been there, and the traditional. And I'm just saying there's not new, fresh talent coming out, putting out music like in other genres. There's no Travis Scott. There's no Drake. Like there's no, you know what I mean? We don't have new things like that. So I hope people can hear this and be like, I really love this music. Like I forgot how good this music was.
Yeah.
So that would be the main takeaway. And then I hope also that people can appreciate the stories. I really value when someone does something that's cohesive. That means a lot to me. And I try to be as cohesive as possible, from the album cover to when people get the physical albums, like the booklet, the colors that we use, the language that I use, the titles of the song. I'm trying to make this feel as nostalgic as possible, yet futuristic at the same time. And I hope that it hits.
Real quick, let's pause. You're gonna give out CDs?
Yeah, we're making CDs. We have physical CDs. We have a limited edition run of CDs that we're gonna do. So, and it's gonna have an exclusive song that's not available anywhere else. So the physical albums that we're selling are gonna have a bonus track, a bachata record, that's not gonna be available anywhere else on Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, YouTube, nowhere. Just on this physical album. And the booklet's gonna be there. So the booklet's gonna have exclusive photos. It's gonna have the credits to all the songs. And I mean, I'm gonna also sign each album, which my hand is gonna hurt that day, but I'm trying to make this as special of an experience as possible.
That's really cool, bro. I haven't bought a CD in like 15 to 20 years.
No, and I hope that I'm a CD collector, so I try to do things that I, as a consumer, would enjoy. Is that the number one business model in the world? Probably not, but I'm a purist, so I'm just trying to make things that I know, like a music fan would be like, oh, I love this. Or I don't know if I should announce this now.
Nah, hold it.
Okay, yeah, but there's gonna be more things like CDs that we do to make people feel attached, like they have something in their hands.
Yeah.
I'm big on that. Like if I pay for something, I want to have something in my hand. So I feel like that's one of the things that has made music a little bit more disposable, is that it's just streamed.
Yeah.
It's on our phone with Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, with everything.
Yeah.
So we don't value it as much.
Right.
Yeah.
So getting people that like physical, tangible thing is really important. I'm excited to see that. So you hope that it hits?
Yeah, I'm hoping that, like I said, that people can leave that album feeling like, I like bachata a lot more than I thought I did.
Yeah.
And the other people that I made it for is the people that grew up in the context I'm singing about.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that they feel represented. So those are the two things that I would probably say I hope people leave with.
That people have a greater appreciation for bachata.
Yeah.
How about for new people? What do you want them to experience?
So there is moments on this album. I try to, it's funny. Sometimes I might contradict myself, but I do try to make things also that other people can
latch on to.
Yes. Yeah. So that you might be like, yo, I don't really like bachata like that, but this kid sounds cool, or this was cool. And so I tried to, when you hear the album, like I try to involve different instruments into the records. I try to put sounds that are new, that are modern into the records. And then there's moments on the album that are not bachata records that I also made it for the people that might be like, hey, I'm just a fan of Frias, or someone recommended this to me. Like,
Yeah.
let me see what this is about. So it's more of a musical experience than just like listening to a bachata playlist.
Sure.
And so I do care. If you don't like bachata, you will probably like Hasta el Fin. You'll probably like Tú No Sabes. You'll definitely like Cicatrices. You'll definitely like Colmado Frias.
Yeah.
Um,
So that joint's fire.
yeah. There's good stories on it, man. You guys,
Yeah.
I try to complacer el público, but I try to be proud of what I make first before I do things for people.
Got it.
Yeah.
Bro, I'm really excited for the album to come out, for people to start
Yes.
hearing it. Any final words, anything else that you want the people to know?
Yeah. I am super grateful for all the support that people have given me over the last few years. I know for a long time, people have been asking me, when is there going to be an album? When is the album coming out? That's like the question that plagues my life. I try to make things that you guys can enjoy truly and that I'm proud of. And that's not an easy balance to find. And it's never perfect. Like it's never, not everyone is going to like it. And you never feel 100% like you're done, you know, or like you're complaciendo. And so I really just hope that, like I mentioned earlier, that you guys can relate to it and that there's a new appreciation. And I hope that you guys can see through this that this is a career worth watching. This is a project worth paying attention to. And this is something that I am trying to change a genre that is very stuck in in the golden days. And I'm trying to bring a new, I don't want to say wave, but just a new special time for the genre. And I'm hoping that I can be a pioneer in that and that you guys feel connected to it. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you, David, so much for sitting down
bro.
and having this conversation with me. I'm super grateful to be able to talk about this project with someone that really cares about the music. And my crew that's here, Chris, Joe, and everyone that supports me, man. I'm super grateful for you guys. And yeah, Si Dios Quiere, the album is out now. You guys can buy it, stream it, order the physical CD, buy merch. Whatever's not sold out right now, do it. Yeah.
100%. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you out there.
Peace.
How did that feel?
Great.